Why do you care so much about others' opinions to listen while doing something else? I feel the invisible weight of every gaze upon you, as if there were a voiceless finger pointing, a silent scale weighing every gesture. This anguish whispers in your chest, throbs in your body, sets the rhythm of your heart even when no one speaks. It's like feeling your own breath trapped by unseen chains that you feel with every hesitant step. You become a hostage to a silent tribunal, judging yourself by standards that are not your own, but that have become inner law, and thus you carry a burden that does not belong in your chest, a burden made of others' echoes. Seneca offers us the image of a mind enslaved by external opinions, chains that hold you prisoner to judgments you never wrote. Every opinion is like an invisible shackle, slowly tightening, transforming your being into a hostage of others' expectation. Imagine for a moment that these chains dissolve when you realize they exist only through your acceptance, when you stop opening the door of your mind to voices that don't uplift your soul. For you, above all, are the guardian of your own inner world. Epictetus whispers across centuries, it is not things in themselves that disturb us, but the opinions we have about them. This power of others' opinions comes alive only when you let them into your heart. You feed them with every worry, every second glance, every what-if that echoes in your mind. And it is at this point that the key lies, recognizing that without your internal permission, no external opinion finds a home. Therefore, ask yourself, how much of your time and energy have you invested in giving voice to judgments that do not truly reflect who you are? To what extent do you live for yourself or for the collective murmur of gazes? Amidst so many voices, do you still recognize the timbre of your own truth? Allow yourself to feel the silence after the last external word. Listen to the beat of your heart in full freedom. Rediscover your own rhythm. After all, liberation begins when you interrupt the transmission of a thought that does not belong to you and return gently inward into your own being. 1. The silent wound of constant approval. Emptiness settles like a knot in your chest every time silence replaces a sign of acceptance. You reach out to the mirror of social media, to that small icon that can light up your day or plunge you into shadows, and you wait, and when the light of a like doesn't arrive, you feel as if air is escaping through an invisible hole inside your body. This emptiness fills every space of your attention, reminding you that the absence of approval hurt as much as a direct blow. Then comes the unconscious ritual of repeating worn-out gesture, refreshing the screen, reviewing the post, rewriting the caption 1,000 times, all in the hope of capturing a glimmer of validation. Your body begs for rest, but your mind remains trapped in the gears of expectation, and you, without realizing it, become a hostage to a relentless search for belonging, as if an external stamp could certify your deepest worth. That's where fear disguised as belonging arises. You want to fit in, you want to be seen, you want to feel the security of an affection that comes from outside. But in truth, this affection seeks to inject into you a pattern that is not your own. Every gesture of self-promotion transforms into a relational trap. For the more you mold yourself to others, the less contact you have with your own essence. And thus, this pursuit simultaneously unites and distances, draws near and pushes away. Imagine trying to fill a leaky bucket with compliments that slip through the voids without ever accumulating. Every great job that arrives is a temporary patch on a structure that falls apart again the next instant. You seek to applaud your own worth from the reflection of others' claps, but that sound is never enough to mend the internal cracks. With every new leak, you feel the urgency for more and more praise, trapped in a cycle where recognition itself ceases to be internal. And then the silent wound deepens when this ritual of seeking approval becomes automatic, waking up and first remembering comments, sleeping thinking about the numbers that were missing. The adult soul behaves like a child who only sleeps when they receive the other's seal. And in this compressed solitude, you realize the absurdity of depending on the echo of external voices to affirm your presence in the world. But there is a moment of clarity when this pain is no longer just a cold wind blowing in the dark. It's when you identify that this hole was dug by no one but yourself. By surrendering the power of your joy to collective judgment, recognizing that every automatic gesture of seeking approval is an invitation to look inward again. And thus, for the first time, pain begins to become a guide, revealing the door that leads back to your own dignity. 2. The invisible chains of external validation. There comes a moment when external judgment ceases to be a window and becomes a thick, silent, yet crushing wall. Every gaze that imagines you exposed, every unspoken sigh of disapproval builds brick upon brick within your mind, erecting a fortress that traps your most authentic desires. You begin to hear within yourself the unspoken sentence, "If he didn't like it, I'm no good." And then the voice that should be yours becomes a distant echo, imprisoned under the weight of the collective gaze. Seneca reminds us that true freedom is born when we stop granting authority to those who observe. However, In daily practice, it's rare to notice the exact moment this permission was granted. You wake up already feeling the pull of invisible string, that discomfort in your stomach, even before checking notification. The choice to surrender power to an external opinion happens in fractions of a second, as abrupt as the click of a chain closing. And in a succession of almost imperceptible gestures, you transform every potential criticism into an internal law, regulating every step for fear of displeasing. The effect is devastating. Constant vigilant without truth. You rehearse smiles, rehearse words, rehearse silences, all in an effort to conform to a standard that shifts with the tide of impression. And when the tide recedes, it exposes the soft sand of your insecurity. Every external approval becomes a safe you try to open, but whose keys are forged by expectations you don't always know. The risk of not meeting those expectations creates a magnetic field of anxiety, a gravitational pull that draws you back to the center of what is accepted, what is praised, what is validated. However, this same current carries the fragment of light that reveals your trap. By observing yourself acting to please, you identify the exact point where your will bends before others will. This recognition often comes as a shock, the faint heat of indignation that burns when you realize you've sacrificed a piece of yourself in exchange for a gesture of approval. It is then that Stoicism raises its torch, showing that what traps us are not external circumstance, but the way we choose to react to them. Unbeknownst to yourself, you can fall down the path of emotional self-sabotage. With every lost note of external approval, every silence after seeking a gesture of esteem, you convince yourself that you have failed yourself, and in an almost ritualistic cycle, you seek a new attempt at reconquest, as if trying to rescue your own fragmented image from the reflection in another's eye. This cycle corrodes dignity, undermining the confidence that you can exist whole beyond the lights and shadows projected by those who observe. But there is, in these dark encounters, a thin thread of choice. With every impulse to yield to the currents of external validation, the opportunity arises to realize that the only vote that truly matters is the one you cast for yourself. Without an explicit order, without the feeling of duty or obligation, just the inner silence that questions who decides the value that defines me, and in deep doubt lies the crack through which freedom begins to shine. From this glimmer, it becomes possible to feel the gentle lightness of a world where the weight of the external gaze loses its power. Every decision once again springs from the fertile ground of your own conviction, and thus, step by step, you walk out of the wall built by others' opinions, rediscovering the breadth of the inner space where your truth resides. 3. The cycle of emotional self-sabotage. There's a subtle movement that begins in the silence of your desire for confirmation and becomes a relentless loop. You ask for a gesture of approval, receive only crumbs of attention, and feel unworthy, so you ask again. This cycle spins within you like a river running in a circle, eroding the bank of your self-esteem. Every crumb of validation acts as a brief remedy, momentarily alleviating the pain, but soon dissipate, leaving exposed the cracked ground of your self-worth. And in the repeated rhythm of this back and forth, you find yourself increasingly dependent on a return that never fully satisfies. There is an invisible error in those who always try to be strong. In the eagerness to show control, you deprive yourself of admitting your own vulnerability. The facade of the unshakable individual is sustained by the effort to hide the fear of rejection, as if demonstrating weakness were a confession of defeat. But by repressing the bank of emotions that pulsates within you, you end up yielding even more space to the other, for the inner silence grows and feeds on what was denied. It's a cruel trap. The more you shy away from looking at your own pain, the more it finds openings to grow and dictate your movement. It's like dancing on a tiny stage, lit by spotlights that never turn off. Your heart races, your hands sweat, and every step seems choreographed to please an invisible audience. You feel the pressure to play a role you didn't write, and when you fail, frustration echoes like a loud drum inside your chest. This compulsive dance of self-sabotage not only consumes your strength, but also steals your freedom to choose new steps, to improvise, to feel the music without fear of judgment. How many times have you allowed yourself to forget who you are just to be seen? With every gesture of relentless pursuit of approval, you move a little further away from yourself. And in this misalignment, an emptiness is born, traversed by doubt. Do I exist beyond the echo of others' voices? However, it is in this very cycle that the invitation to break the wheel hides. By observing your own condition with compassion, you discover that the first gesture of genuine strength is to pay attention to your own heart. Self-awareness casts a new light on the painful dynamic, and in encountering your fragility, you find the starting point to build a freedom that does not depend on external applause. 4. The inner rupture. When others' mirror break, there comes an instant when the mask you wear daily not only falls, but shatters into millions of sharp fragments. Emotional exhaustion settles like a dense fog that prevents air from reaching your lung. You realize you can no longer sustain the smile because every muscle in your face is tired of portraying a self that doesn't exist. It is in the silence of broken strings that the fissure appears. The collective mirror breaks and reveals the emptiness left behind. There was a woman who, in a second without a light, felt her feet give way. That brief moment of absence exposed how much her mood depended on an external signal. She stopped talking about follower count, began to feel her own pulse beating in her chest, and for the first time heard an inner voice asking for attention. This moment of disharmony was the snap that suggested a return to her own heart, an invitation to directly face what she had previously avoided. When the external world falls silent, whether by the quietness of a notification-free environment or by the simple gaze that doesn't reach you, what remains is the inner echo, the pure sound of your breathing. This echo can be frightening, as it brings forth thoughts that were buried by the rush for approval. Yet in it lies the door to self-awareness. The emptiness reveals what needs to be filled from within, not from outside. In this moment of fissure, Stoicism offers a gentle beacon. It points out that although the pain of the break is intense, it opens the way to rediscover one's own dignity. The shadow cast by the obligation to conform disappears, and the only voice that deserves attention is the one born from your center. It is there, in the serenity of the exposed heart, that the connection to your original truth is rekindled, the one that should never have been sacrificed in exchange for another's reflect. 5. The reunion with Stoic dignity. There's a faint light that emerges when you realize your virtue doesn't depend on external applause. This dignity, according to the Stoic, is like a lighthouse erected amidst a turbulent sea, integral and firm even when the waters rage. You feel your heart quiet, as if each beat returned to its natural rhythm, free from external pulses imposed by others' voice. It is in this lightness that you perceive the deepest value springs from inner cultivation, not from reflections that shatter at the slightest breath of wind. In the body, breathing deepen. Each inhale brings the invitation to anchor yourself in the present. Each exhale releases a tension held within us for so long. Emotional neuroscience shows that this simple act reduces the amygdala, the part of the brain that triggers insecurity alarm, allowing the prefrontal cortex to function with clarity and self-compassion. Thus, upon feeling the urge to check what others think of you, your body already signals, here and now, there is something more valuable than any light. This reunion also occurs in the silence of choices. When the urge to adjust your voice to the collective tone arises, something within you recognizes, that's not my melody. And without fanfare, you listen to the original song pulsating in your chest, soft but irrefutable. It's like erecting a personal lighthouse amidst the fog of expectations, emitting a light that doesn't need to be seen to fulfill its purpose, to illuminate your path. In daily practice, this means rediscovering small gestures of self-love without the weight of obligation. Savoring coffee in the company of your own thought, writing a sentence that only makes sense to you, keeping your gaze fixed on the horizon without seeking confirmation. Every act becomes a reminder that true approval lies in the need to honor your own heart, and not in the count of voices echoing around you. And at the peak of this journey, you realize that self-control is not coldness, but care for your own heart. Rigidity gives way to a compassionate embrace of yourself. Discipline emerges as a form of inner respect, not punishment. In this place of restored integrity, you discover the gentle freedom of existing beyond change, rising with the certainty that no external gaze can steal the dignity of what lives silently within you, rebuilding your inner compass. Seneca reminds us that no wind favors him who has no destined port. These words echo in the restored silence of your heart, revealing that without an internally defined north, any breeze of external approval can divert your course. By taking the reins of your own mind, you set your path without depending on the shifting currents of others' opinion. Every thought gains the weight of a lit sail within you, guiding steps that have purpose, not just resistant chance or judgment. Marcus Aurelius whispers that you have power over your mind, not over external event. This distinction is the portal to silent responsibility, recognizing that although you don't control circumstances, you always choose the tone of your own reaction. It is there, in this space of conscious choice, that gentle freedom arises, where others' opinions lose the key to your inner prison. And now, when the world's voice falls silent, what truth would you reveal about yourself?